Hi, good morning. So, today I would like to talk about how our system of elections incentivizes vote bank politics. Firstly, I would like to talk about what exactly is our system of elections. Let us say there is a candidate, and this candidate is contesting for a seat in a certain constituency, and there won't be one candidate, there will be many candidates. And if a candidate wins out of these many candidates, it happens many times that the person who had won often wins not by a majority of the votes that are cast, but by getting votes more than the rest of the candidates. Uh, so uh, so this is our kind of election. So when it comes to getting the number of seats, it has got to do with more than majority. But when it comes to getting the number of votes that are cast, the proportion or the percentage of votes that are cast, it does not have to be a majority. And in our case, in India, often candidates win with less than 25% of the vote share out of the total number of votes that are cast. So this is a form of election, and it's called the first past the post system. Whoever gets the highest number of votes wins. It need not necessarily be the majority. So I would like to emphasize on this particular point that I've mentioned right now by giving two examples. The first example is that of UP, and I would like to take you back to 1991 to 2002, the period in between that. In that period, there were elections that were conducted in UP, and I would like to give you certain facts based on those elections. Firstly, the voter turnout in those elections, that is, out of the total number of voters who were registered, the voter turnout on average between 1991 to 2002 was 50%. And secondly, uh, there were candidates who were contesting for a seat, and on average, between that period from 1991 to 2002, the total number of candidates who contested for a seat was 20. That's the second fact. The third fact is the candidate who had won out of those candidates, on average, got only 37% of the vote share out of the total number of voters who had voted. He had only got 37% of the vote share. Remember, it is the average. So what that means is, in between the period from 1991 to 2002, there were candidates who had won with less than 37% of the vote share. That is less than the average. Uh, so it so happened that there were candidates who had won with less than 20% of the vote share. So what I want to stress here is all that a candidate requires to win a seat is the backing of a very small percentage of the voters who had voted. In this case, it was on average 37% and often less than 20%. And that's why I was telling that often a candidate requires less than 25% of the votes to win an election or a seat. I would like to stress on this point further by taking another example. And this time I'll take the example of Bihar. In 1995, it was the RJD party that was ruling, and it was also contesting the elections. Let me again give you certain facts. The voter turnout in those elections was 59% out of the total registered voters, of course. And RJD itself won the election with 34.3% vote share out of the total number of voters who had registered. It had only secured 34.3% of the vote share, and it had won. And the next fact is the leader of RJD, who had won a seat, had only secured 20.2% of the vote share. So that's again a very small fraction of the votes that were cast. So all that a political leader requires to win an election is the backing or the support of a very small fraction of population. I'm stressing on this fact because this particular fact, that the backing of a small section of population to win an election, also causes the politicians or the political parties to indulge in a certain kind of politics where they would divert, where they would promise that they would divert a lot of public resources to this small section of the population. And this is called vote bank politics. And I would like to give light on this vote bank politics using a certain example. And my example is like this. Firstly, if there is a candidate who is contesting, and if there is a political leader or a political party who is already ruling, to indulge voters into voting for their parties, there are certain things that these political parties would do. For example, let us say there is 150 rupees of public money that a political leader has, okay, and out of this 150 rupees, let us say 50 rupees goes for administrative purposes, for corruption. So the political leader is left with 100 rupees. So this 100 rupees can be used in many ways, and one way it can be used is this is public money, so it can be invested in building public resources like infrastructure and roads. And after building those public resources, the value could be created to that 100 rupees. That 100 rupees could become 150 rupees. For example, if roads are built, if there's electricity, and if there are hospitals, there'll be businesses that would come to that area that the political leader is representing. And once that happens, there'll be employment that would be generated. And this way the value is created for people living in that area. They would get employed and all. So that value, I'll capture it as 150 rupees. So firstly, there is 100 rupees. That 100 rupees is invested into creating public resources, and then value is added to that 100 rupees as a result of that, and that value is 150 rupees. So let us say that the candidate has been voted by 15 voters. So each voter in that case gets a value of 10 rupees. So 150 by 15. So out of 150 rupees by 15, so that's 10 rupees. Now let me come to another scenario. I told you that the political leader has rupees 150. 50 rupees goes to administrative purposes and corruption, and the rest of 100 rupees he can do anything he wants with that. The first scenario was he had invested in public resources. Now let me come to the second scenario. That 100 rupees, rather than giving benefit to his 15 voters that I mentioned, he can just give benefit to 5 voters, let us say. That benefit, let us say, goes in the form of welfare schemes. Let us say that benefit goes in the form of handouts before the elections, and only to those 5 voters, which means for each voter, that 100 rupees, if that 100 rupees goes to 5 voters, for each voter gets a benefit of 20 rupees. In the former case, when the political leader had invested in public resources for 15 voters, each voter got a benefit of 10 rupees. In this case, when the political leader had provided 100 rupees for 5 voters in the way of welfare schemes and handouts, etc., each voter got 20 rupees. So 20 rupees is double 10 rupees. Now, it is highly tempting to think for a political leader and a political party that this 20 rupees for 5 voters would encourage these 5 voters to come out and vote for them than 10 rupees for those 15 vote for out of those 15 voters for each voters. I mean, 20 rupees for each vote out of 5 would encourage these 5 voters to come out and vote, motivate these 5 voters to come out and vote, than giving a benefit of rupees 10 to each voter out of those 15 voters. So it is highly tempting to think, and it is something that has also worked. So even if these 5 voters come and vote, even if 90% of these 5 voters come and vote, it is possible that the political party or leader can come back to power, because I told you that all a candidate requires is a small fraction of the votes cast to win an election, and that small fraction was often around less than 25%. So even if around 4 voters vote out of 5, out of those 5 voters who got the benefit of the 100, each one getting 20, the political candidate or the political leader or the political party wins. So, so often the second strategy of giving benefits of 100 rupees to 5 voters is used than giving benefits of 150 rupees to 15 voters. So what this does is, when the political party wins and comes to power, again, it would uh, it would only divert the public resources to these 5 loyal group of voters than the 15 voters. So, so what this also does is it would ensure that only the small group of voters benefit from the ruling party. And this kind of politics is called vote bank politics. There is this bank of 5 voters. The political leaders or political parties invest in that bank, and in return they get they get seats, or they could possibly get back to power, or become the ruling government. So hope I was able to make clear the link between our election system. By the way, our election system, where a candidate requires the highest number of votes compared to the rest of the candidates who are contesting a seat, rather than getting a majority, is called first past the post system. So in this first past the post system, it incentivizes vote bank politics naturally, like I told you in the video so far, and there is a great link between that, and it has been happening for decades now, and nowadays there seems to be some respite from the vote bank politics, but it still continues. Uh, in the 1990s and 2000s, it was only the vote bank politics which determined the election result, but nowadays it's not just the vote bank politics. There are aspects like governance also that are taking precedence, and also I hope you found this link between the first past the post system and the vote bank politics interesting. Thank you very much.